So UConn
Mm-hmm.
took the floor at Madison Square Garden after Illinois was finished with FAU. The opponent, North Carolina, and UConn got a big performance from Cam Spencer, 23.7 rebounds, 6 assists. They win at 87-76. Was that the right score?
Yes, it was another double-digit win, 25 in the past 26 now. Until they lose a second one, this is going to be an ongoing thing. They didn't win at Kansas. They come back and respond 87-76.
Here's my first question for you, because I think we all in the preseason thought that, hey, maybe UConn will have a chance to repeat. It's a preseason top 10-ish type team. A month into this thing, you have to feel better, unless you were just a UConn believer from the jump, like that's the best team in the country. You got to feel better wherever you. For most of us, you got to feel better about UConn today than you felt coming into the thing. They look great. And are they, a month into the season, do they look best equipped to repeat as a national champion as any team we've had a month into the season since Florida actually repeated as national champions? I didn't take the time to look this up. Honestly, it just sort of popped into my head. I was driving in today, but maybe one like Kansas 09 might have looked this way a month into it. Kansas last season might have looked like legitimate contender a month into the season, but I'd still take the field over UConn to win a national championship, obviously, but they look like different pieces, different team, but they look like they could do it.
Is Connecticut right now, although Kansas fans might make that argument after what happened Friday in their joint, is Connecticut the favorite to win the national title as of right now? I don't think the odds have that, although they haven't updated since this game last night. Although a result like this, I actually think furthers the cause. I think that's got to be the case. Now, if you sort the data on Torvik, and I have an update on that, by the way, Seth Davis, longtime dedicated podcast listener, he reached out on Sunday night, and we had a little back and forth, and he now knows how to sort the data. At least part of the data, for in-season, remove preseason bias. He is now aware of that. Seth, I'm really proud of you. You sort the data. Connecticut right now in season efficiency. Torvik, it's 5th. At KenPom, which is factoring preseason bias, still you cannot sort the data at KenPom.
I can.
3rd overall. Yeah, I'd love to see you try. 3rd overall. I think Connecticut is best equipped here. Okay, so 2 weeks ago,
I do have the odds, updated odds, to win the national championship.
This was as of what, Monday, Tuesday? I know it was this week they got updated.
I mean, they update constantly.
Yeah, I don't know if you get the futures that really refresh like every 24 hours, though. I'm just trying
I'm on FanDuel.com right now.
All right,
FanDuel Sportsbook.
Yep.
Make every moment more.
All right, what are the damn odds?
Okay, just guess. Who do you think's the favorite to win the national championship right now?
Kansas.
Kansas is plus 1,300. That is tied for 3rd.
How about that? Jeez. Tied for 3rd. So there's 2 teams ahead of them?
That's right.
Okay, there's no ties in 1 or 2?
That's right. There is a clear, there is a favorite. There is a team that has better odds than anybody else.
I'll say Purdue.
It is Purdue at plus 1,000.
And I will say it should be UConn too. If you tell me it's Duke, that is brutal this morning.
I'm not going to tell you it's Duke. I'm going to tell you that it is Arizona. It's Purdue at plus 1,000, Arizona at plus 1,100, and then Connecticut and Kansas both at plus 1,300, followed by Marquette and Houston both at plus 1,500.
That makes sense. So 2 weeks ago, I watched UConn walk into the Garden and destroy. Look, how about this? My big takeaway on that, we talked about a little bit on the pod, was UConn after beating who was it? Texas, I guess it was. It had the makeup of a team that can repeat and win the national title. Obviously, that hasn't changed. I tweeted as much on Tuesday night. But the fact that they did it, like the Garden was tremendous last night. I mean, it really was. I'm going to be that guy. This felt like an Elite Eight game, GP.
Man, I can't tell you how many games feel like Elite Eight games.
There's so many, right?
Oh, man, they always
feel like Elite. That's why, if you really follow, sometimes I'll be like, this feels like a 2nd round game in Des Moines right now. Because sometimes, you know what? Sometimes they do. It did have Big East tournament final environment. Carolina fans showed up huge. Obviously, UConn fans were in there in big numbers. It was only UConn's 2nd win ever over UNC in its first in 22 seasons. They did. The point that I am worming to here, Klingon is still bothered by the toe, and my court report leads on Tristan Newton, who was just okay, but Tristan Newton right now is an all-American point guard, and what he does for this team, it's just time to stop overlooking him for his overall value. And yet, here's my point. They didn't need him to be awesome against Carolina last night. Klingons is dealing with the toe. He hasn't been close to the player that we projected to be in the preseason so far. Caravan dislocated his finger. He played through it and finally got into a groove. Cam Spencer, who was unafraid of the moment, and his look, by the way, the black shoes with the white socks, not an absolute Adonis out there. It just, I thought it added a tremendous element and a vibe. And yeah, like I was sitting courtside, and he might have had a few choice words on one occasion for the UNC fan section. He showed up big, and he's not even 100% healthy, and they still did this. Like, they peeled away from Carolina. Carolina couldn't keep pace, and to me, it was more about UConn than UNC last night. But if you're UNC, like you'd like to see a little bit more. They just didn't. They don't have that. They're not on Connecticut's level right now. You can't make that case. They were in a neutral court environment, and it was truly neutral court. Forget that it was the Garden and it was driving distance from stores. I was sitting there in that building that was about as close to 50-50 fan split as I think. It might have been 55-45 UConn. And Carolina, the emotions in the game were high. Baycott got a BS technical, then Cam Spencer got one a little bit later. I felt like the emotion of the game, I'm not going to say it was the factor that prevented Carolina from overcoming, but I felt like UConn thrived off it a little bit more. And to me, especially after Purdue lost at Northwestern, I mean, Connecticut lost at Kansas by 4 and looked about as good as you could ask them to look in that circumstance with, they're still not fully healthy. Connecticut, as of December 6th, 2023, is best positioned to win the national title. That will probably change, but I am all the way there right now this morning, GP.
I don't know that I'd make them the favorite, but I wouldn't argue with you about it if you wanted to. I mean, again, technically, we just referenced the numbers. They're not the favorite, but they look the part. They look capable. Every year, whether it's December 6th or January 6th or February 6th, you start to try to, okay, who knows who will win the tournament, but let's start identifying teams that look like they got the pieces to do it. And clearly, if you're putting together a list of even maybe 2 or 3, you'd probably need to have UConn on it. And what's noticeable to me, we all talk to coaches, and we've all heard them in situations where they're just frustrated with their team, or they don't like their team, or they feel like they're missing just this one piece. Like I talked to a coach who was getting ready to coach in the Sweet 16 one year, and when I got him on the phone, he was coach of a top 2 seed, headed to the Sweet 16. Got him on the phone before that, and he was convinced that his point guard wasn't good enough to go any further, and that he was going to be favored in a Sweet 16 game, but he hated his point guard so much. Mm-hmm. Just could I can't believe I've got to try to go to a Final Four with this guy. Like, okay, okay. So
who was that, Coach?
I can't tell you. So, but my point is this: tell me if you've noticed this.
Okay.
Every time Dan Hurley talks, he seems to love his team.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. No, that is part of it.
He talks. He seems like, and it's not just like I've got good players. He seems to love everything about them: their approach, their mindset, their swagger, the way they carry themselves. He sounds like a man who knows I've got a different team from last season, but I've got a team that is good enough to do exactly what we did last season.
And they are absolutely in it in the best of ways right now. And to that point, I did not put this part in my story on Wednesday, but I talked to Kamani Young, the UConn associate head coach, about Tristan, and I got Dan after the game last night, and I didn't put this part in, but and I'm going to paraphrase Dan here. He basically was saying, when we got Tristan here, like it took time for him to a little bit of time for him just to adapt to us, because the way he's wired, he's not like Dan or Kamani or assistant coach Luke Murray or a lot of guys on the UConn roster, where the emotions always out, the volume's always up at 8 at a minimum, and they just kind of walk around with that swagger. That's not what Tristan Newton is. And Hurley told me last night, he's like, you know what? Like, he's done the things we've asked of him. He's the most valuable guard in America as far as I'm concerned, which absolutely he should say that. And that might prove to be true, but he should say that as his coach. But he said, I have learned that it's probably a good thing that not every single guy on my team has my personality, or even has our personality as a program. Like Tristan is a little bit different in that regard, but it is what we need. And I would agree with that. He is a cool customer out there, and he's got a pretty stroke. And I was told that if you really dig into some of the numbers from some of these companies that are tracking stuff beyond your basic box score statistics, or even some tempo free stuff, Newton's value in terms of where he is, how he understands floor spacing, deflections, et cetera, it's among the best in the sport right now. And they got a great thing going, man. They really, really do. They have passed the test. My last thing on UConn is this. Hurley did say last night in the presser, and he's not one to like say stuff to, even if he doesn't fully mean it, but to send a message to his team. So I was surprised. He said this team is not as far along as the team last year at this point in the season. So the team that didn't lose in non-conference play. And he thinks that this team's got a good chance at being close to as good as the team last season. I'm definitely going to take him for his word on that, Parrish. I'm just telling you, I know the talented team that had last season. What I've seen so far, I don't know. Hurley kind of tapping the brakes a little bit kind of surprised me, because I have seen nothing to indicate otherwise that this team can't be on the level of the group that he had last year. But we'll see on that. The Kansas loss it's maybe the best loss of the season for any team so far. I'm really interested on that. Real quick on UNC, and then it's all yours. I didn't buy them being a top 10 team. I do buy them being a top 25 team. They are definitely, like, they have upgraded this year. That's undeniable. They've got a good win over Tennessee. They had to hold on late, but that was a definitive win. They beat Arkansas. If you've watched them play, like, there's a difference. I just wonder, Elliot Cadeau, the young point guard, I think, but we'll have to see. I think he's going to gradually progress, and by the time we get to February, he might well be playing like a sophomore, and they're going to need him to do that. But UNC is back to running. Hubert just said he needs the team to be a better rebounding team. He's absolutely right about that. They are they're a tier below. They are not one of the 10 best teams in the country right now. Yes, the ranking represents that, but I think the staff is aware of that as well. And they can get there, and they may well get there, but there's still more stuff they have to work on. And it can't just be, let's let RJ Davis be the central point of our offense and then play off Baycott. It's Harrison Ingram has a lot of talent. Cormac Ryan, he's going to be shooting better. So I think Tar Heel fans are still optimistic. It's a loss in a competitive environment. I would have liked to have seen him play him closer, but I am in on UNC's future moving forward. I think this team will be a single-digit seed, and I'm not too taken aback about what we saw on Tuesday.
My last thing on UConn is, Dan's saying, hey, we'll publicly saying we'll see if this team can be as good as last season's team, and that it's not as far as long at this moment. It might not be. Like, as we're saying, like, two things can be true at the same time. They look like a national championship contender. They might not be as good as last season's team, but
keep going.
But like that, the explanation for that might be, simple. They lost a lottery pick and the most outstanding player of the Final Four, right? Like, you can still be a national championship contender and not be as good as last season's national champion. But they are 8-1 with the lone loss coming at Allen Fieldhouse by 4 points, and then they've got victories now over North Carolina, Texas, and a top 4 team in from the state of Indiana. So that's a pretty good resume. Through 9 games, I guess you'd rather be 9-0 than 8-1, but you'd take this every single time if you're Dan Hurley after losing everything that they lost from last season's team.